Somewhere right now, there is a photo of you that you have absolutely no memory of. Maybe it is your first birthday, cake on your face, everyone laughing, your parents looking at you like you were the most important thing that has ever existed. You were there. You were fully awake. You were experiencing every single second of it. And you remember none of it. Not one moment. Most people hear that and think, well, I was just too young. My brain wasn't developed enough to store memories yet. But that explanation is wrong. And the real answer is so much stranger, so much darker, and so much more personal than anyone ever tells you. Because here's what the science actually shows. Your baby brain was not failing to record your life. It was recording everything, every face, every sound, every feeling. Every single experience you had in those first years, your brain was capturing all of it. The memories were there. Something destroyed them. In 1905, a man named Sigmund Freud became the first person to give this phenomenon a name. He called it infantile amnesia. And for over a century, scientists assumed the explanation was simple. Infant brains are too underdeveloped to form lasting memories. The system just isn't online yet. But then researchers started actually testing babies. And what they found completely broke that assumption. In the 1980s, a psychologist named Carolyn Rovey Collier at Rutgers University ran one of the most elegant experiments in the history of memory research. She took babies, some as young as 2 months old, and tied a ribbon from their ankle to a mobile hanging above their crib. Within minutes, the babies figured it out. Kick the leg. Mobile moves. Mobile moves means fun. They were learning in real time at 2 months old. Then she came back days later. Same babies. Same mobile. No ribbon attached yet. The moment those babies saw the mobile, they started kicking. They remembered. 2-month-old babies holding a memory for days. 6-month-olds held those memories for weeks. So the idea that infant brains cannot form memories, that was never the real problem. The memories were forming just fine. The question is why none of them survived into adulthood. The first part of the answer lives deep inside your brain, in a small curved structure called the hippocampus. Think of the hippocampus as your brain's memory filing system. It takes lived experiences, conversation, a smell, a moment, and converts them into something you can actually recall later. In adults, the hippocampus works hand in hand with the prefrontal cortex to tag, organize, and retrieve those memories on demand. But in the brain of an infant, this entire system is still under construction. The connections between the hippocampus and the cortex are being built in real time. A critical gateway called the dentate gyrus, the structure that actually allows new memories to enter long-term storage, is not fully wired until somewhere between ages 2 and 4. So your infant brain could absolutely create short-term memories. It just had no reliable way to move them into permanent storage. But here's where the story gets genuinely strange. Because that structural explanation only accounts for part of what happened to your earliest years. The rest of the answer is something scientists only discovered in 2014. And when they published it, even other researchers found it hard to believe. 2 neuroscientists in Toronto, Sheena Jocelyn and Paul Franklin, were working at the hospital for sick children when they developed a hypothesis that sounded almost absurd. What if the very process building your brain was simultaneously erasing your memories? Here's what they meant. In the first years of life, your hippocampus is producing new neurons at an extraordinary rate. This process is called neurogenesis. New brain cells being born and wired into existing circuits constantly. This is essential. Those new neurons are literally constructing the brain you will use for the rest of your life. But Jocelyn and Franklin suspected there was a cost nobody had noticed. Every time a new neuron integrates into an existing memory circuit, it disrupts the connections already in place. The same connections that were holding your memories. To test this, they ran experiments on mice. When they artificially increased neurogenesis in adult mice, forcing their brains to grow new neurons at a baby-like rate, those adult mice started forgetting things they had previously learned. Then they did the reverse. They slowed neurogenesis in infant mice to an adult-like rate. Those infant mice held onto their memories far longer than normal infant mice ever do. The results were published in the journal Science. The conclusion was deeply counterintuitive. Your baby brain was not too weak to hold memories. It was too busy growing. The flood of new neurons building your mind also tore through the circuits, storing your earliest experiences. Your first years were not lost because they were never recorded. They were lost because your brain kept building new rooms and tearing down the old walls in the process. But there is still one more layer, and this one might be the strangest of all. To form what scientists call autobiographical memory, the kind where you are the main character, where you can close your eyes and actually replay a moment from your past, you need something most adults take completely for granted. You need a sense of self. You need to understand that you exist as a separate person, that things are happening to you specifically, that there is a you at the center of every experience. And for most of the first 2 years of life, that sense of self simply does not exist yet. Developmental psychologists have a classic test for this called the mirror test. Take a baby, put a small dot of color on their nose without them noticing, then hold them in front of a mirror. Before 18 months, babies look at the reflection and treat it like another child. They reach toward the mirror. They do not understand that they are looking at themselves. After 18 months, something shifts. The baby looks in the mirror, pauses, and then reaches up to touch their own nose, not the reflection. They recognize themselves. That moment of self-recognition, that is the birth of the self. And it tracks almost exactly with the earliest age at which autobiographical memories begin to form. In other words, you cannot remember being a baby partly because there was no you yet. Not in the way you experience yourself now. There was no narrator inside your head packaging your experiences into a story called your life. Which raises a question that is genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. If there was no continuous self, and the brain that held your earliest experiences was physically dismantled and rebuilt neuron by neuron, is the baby in your old photographs actually you? Or is it someone else entirely? Someone who lived inside the same body, but whose mind was completely disassembled and reassembled into the person you eventually became. There is one final piece, and it changes the way you think about memory entirely. Language. A developmental psychologist named Catherine Nelson spent years studying exactly how children form lasting memories. Her conclusion was radical. Language does not just describe our memories. Language structures them. Before you could speak, every experience you had was encoded as raw sensory input. Light, sound, temperature, emotion, pure unfiltered sensation. But without words to organize those sensations, they had no framework to attach to, no skeleton to hold them together. The moment children begin talking, and especially the moment adults start having conversations with them about past events, their ability to form lasting memories improves dramatically. Think about how parents do this naturally. Remember when we went to the park? You went on the swings. You were laughing so much. That act of narrating a child's experience to them is not just cute. It is literally building the architecture of that child's memory. And this effect is not the same everywhere. Psychologist Chi Wang at Cornell found that the age of your earliest surviving memory actually varies by culture. In Western cultures, where parents frequently narrate their children's experiences and build detailed personal stories, first memories tend to start around age 3.5. Among the Maori of New Zealand, whose oral tradition places extraordinary weight on personal history and storytelling, the average first memory reaches back to age 2.5, a full year earlier. In certain East Asian cultures, where early childhood stories focus less on the individual child, first memories tend to start closer to age 4 or later. The culture you are born into literally determines how far back you can see into your own past. So here's what actually happened to your earliest years. Your hippocampus was not ready to file long-term memories. And even when it started to, the wave of new neurons tore through the circuits holding them. You had no sense of self to anchor those experiences to, and you had no language to give them a shape that could survive. It was not one thing, it was everything, all at once, working against you from the very beginning. And here's what makes this hit differently when you really sit with it. Every single person you have ever met has the same black hole where the first years of their life should be. Every human being alive. Every person who ever lived. The scientist who discovered neurogenesis. The mother who sang to you. Every world leader, every philosopher, every person you admire. All of them are walking around with a missing beginning. None of them can remember who they were before they became who they are. The answer to why is not that your brain was too simple or too small. It is that your brain was doing something far more important than remembering. It was becoming you. And that process, the construction of a human mind from scratch, is required, quite literally, destroying the person who existed before. You did not lose your earliest memories. You traded them for everything you are now.